Gentlemen, ladies, good evening. Little ones, hello to you as well. It's me, Kat. You'd remember me. I've come to spend a little time with you this evening. I do like to spend time in your company, and I hope you enjoy mine. And if you'd care to come and converse with me, I'd very much appreciate it. You're welcome to come and keep me company. You're welcome to walk around with me. Gentlemen, tonight you're free to step out of your cells. You're free to remove your hoods. You're free to speak. And I'll be here for a few hours, so please do feel free to seek me out if you'd like to talk to me.
Hola, and welcome to the very first Chronicles podcast. My name is Ellie.
My name is Jason. In front of me I have the wonderful Anthony Kilner. Say hello, Anthony.
Hello, Jason.
And I also have the wonderful Gary. Say hello, Gary.
G'day.
Let's jump straight into it.
Thanks, Anthony, for joining us today. And what exactly do you do?
What exactly do I do?
Tell us a bit about yourself.
So I am a psychic medium, and I've been studying and writing books on the subject. Yes, I connect with spirit. Yes, and I do readings, and I worked with Gary for quite a few years now. We are very open-minded about what we do and how we have our experiences, and for me it's all about learning the connection, how to get better at it. I use tools like divining rods, and I still think of my body as probably the best tool to use because it's open to clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, everything, and just sensing what spirit's all about, and that's really what I'm about.
So Gary, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself?
Now, I'm a paranormal enthusiast, is what I call myself. Started off investigating the paranormal, and I'm into my 40th year of doing that. It's all about a journey for me. There were a lot of things that were happening when I was younger, and there just weren't the answers there. So I set out on this little journey to find the answers, why things were happening, and what it was that was happening. Now it's just Anthony and I, we just get out and go places, and we sort of rely on each other, basically.
Amazing. Well, I know I personally can't wait to pick both of your brains about so many questions. But I guess before we get into the real nitty-gritty of the conversation today, we should introduce and talk a bit about ourselves, Jason, and what we do and why we're here. My name is Ellie, and I'm an actor. I'm also a creative artist. I've come from a sort of design background. And the reason I am so interested in, I wouldn't really say the paranormal, I guess I would more say the unknown, is I've got a pretty avid curiosity, and I really don't know much about any of this stuff. I'm a bit skeptical, mostly I guess seeing is believing, and that's why I'm here.
I'm a tour guide. I've always had an interest in ghosts, and I've had a few bizarre experiences in the past. I have found that people do have a lot of strange experiences, and when you talk to someone who's extremely credible or someone you trust and they tell you that they honestly believe something happened to them, then there's got to be some truth to it. But you find that with dark history and stories about how people have been troubled and how they've triumphed as well over adversity, you do learn more about how the world is the way that it is today. And I suppose you learn how to cope with it and put your own lives into perspective.
So Chronicles is a podcast that Jason and I have come together to create because, well, we kind of met through our love of history, really.
That's right. About those more mysterious side of history that you bump into, the creepy side of it. Stuff that's very unexplained, and we decided we wanted to explore it, go to some bizarre places around Victoria and see if we could find some answers to some unusual questions.
Jason and I have really decided our first location we wanted to go to Castlemaine Jail. The reason why the Castlemaine Jail is in Castlemaine is pretty important as well, especially the history of Castlemaine.
I've been there many times, got a lot of history, a lot of spooky history too, so that's something we can elaborate on a bit later.
Pretty obvious where the jail is. It's kind of looming up on this hill looking over the town.
Castlemaine was one of the larger towns where they discovered gold. It was mostly alluvial gold, and that meant that lots of people travelled up from Melbourne and decided to call Castlemaine their home as they were trying to dig the gold out. But it definitely wasn't a place that you wanted to find yourself.
We started off here because of the gold rush, and so the first jail was a tree, and then we went to a log jail, and then we got this magnificent prison built in 1861.
What kind of prisoners ended up there over the years, and how long was the jail a jail for? Obviously it's not in use anymore. Let's start with that.
There were two lots of people on the goldfields that we did not like. One of them were the Chinese and one of them were ex-convicts. If there was a crime, it would be one of them, which was totally unfair.
This is typical Victorian times. Times are hard. Why work to dig a hole in the ground to get gold when you can knock your mate off next door and grab his gold?
Absolutely. And when we were at the jail, one of the things that I discovered and I found so bizarre was that a lot of people ended up in that prison that didn't commit any crimes. Basically, they were locked up just for being poor.
They were vagrant. So if you're vagrant, you're in jail.
Some men that were incarcerated here, unfortunately, their wives and their children couldn't support themselves either, so they came along into the prison with them.
Well, they wouldn't come with them, but they would be charged with a crime in their own right. Some people, they were told by the government that you must marry again. Now, the government didn't care who you married. It could even be a violent person. The important thing was to get married again on the goldfields. But some people couldn't do that either. So therefore, the mother would be thrown into jail with a sentence of 3 to 12 months hard labour for a crime called vagrancy. That is being poor, not able to support yourself.
That's awful.
It's a hard life. And it was a hard life.
Castlemaine was a silent prison, right? Prisoners weren't even allowed to lean against the walls of their cells, or they weren't allowed to speak to one another. I mean, what kind of life would that have been for someone?
The aim of prisons back then was not about reform, it was about punishment. The prisoners here were required to wear canvas hoods, but they were not allowed to interact with one another. If you leaned against the wall of your cell, you would be punished. Wow. If you spoke to another prisoner, if you spoke to one of the wardens, one of the guards, you would be punished. You were not allowed to sit on the floor of your cell, not allowed to sit on your bed. You basically were only allowed to exist.
You would generally have one person to every single cell, and it was meant to be more humane. You were meant to be able to stick someone in there, they'll have a chance to think about their crimes, and eventually when they're released, they'll be, well, reformed. Generally what that led to was a large amount of suicides, a large amount of people just going insane, and I guess a lot of resentment as well, because you can't really stick someone away from other people, not talk to them, and just basically expect them to rebuild themselves. It just doesn't happen.
Let's have a look at some of the crimes and that were committed that caused these people to get put in jail. I mean, you've got the obvious, which is your murder and your robbery and all that sort of stuff. Vagrancy is another typical one. I mean, it's ridiculous to put someone away for vagrancy, but that's what they did. From your average Australian guy to your Indigenous guy all the way down to your Chinese. They were out there to make their fortune, but as we know, there are a number of Chinese that were hung at the jail.
One long boy, he had his shop. He was only 25 and he was a little man, and he had to say goodbye to his wife and his infant child. There was a robber that came up and threatened him with a pistol, so Long Poi took off. He wanted to get him away from the shop and his wife and his child. There was a scuffle down the road and the pistol went off and the robber was killed. This day we do not know who pulled the trigger, but Long Poi, he was Chinese, so they pointed to him and said he was guilty of murder.
Lompoy was taken to the court, and it didn't really seem that he understood what was actually happening. He definitely didn't understand the severity of his sentence. Apparently, when they brought him up to be hanged, he grabbed onto the rope at the gallows, and he turned to the hangman and asked him not to push him down and to stop him from falling. The hangman just pushed him back, pulled the lever, and it's what you would call a botched execution. At the time, they were meant to be instant, but unfortunately for Lompoy, apparently he was strangled to death, and it took quite a few minutes for him to pass away.
What I discovered at the prison and I found really interesting, especially looking through, I guess, the logbook of prisoners that have come in and out, the ones that were recorded, there were so many children.
Back in the gold rush period, we didn't have orphanages. We did end up with industrial schools, but many times children would come to jail. The reason that we'd put them in jail is to look after them. Child, 9-month-old, who was in here for larceny.
9 months old?
Old baby. So that child would be put with an adult, charged with vagrancy, not able to support itself. But the longest child at this jail was Boy Webster. He was 8 years old and he was here for about a year.
8 years old?
8 years old.
What did that little boy do wrong?
Nothing, just being neglected. His father had died a few years earlier and his mother unfortunately passed away as well. So therefore he was on the goldfields.
Again, that's the vagrancy rule coming in.
Yeah.
That was a common thing across the goldfields. It wasn't just in Castlemaine. That happened around Geelong. It happened in a whole lot of other places as well, where the parents couldn't afford to feed them, and they would just walk away and leave the kids there.
It's not hard to imagine the prison as it is now, back in the day when it was still in use. Walking through there, it literally feels like nothing has changed. When we were up there, Jason and I was looking at the rope hanging down. I think I was making a joke, and we walked into the condemned cell. I didn't know what it was at that point. I just thought it was another cell, and the strangest sensation came over me.
Now, a lot of people tell me over and over that around the gallows and the condemned cell, they get a very, very heavy feeling.
Something's weird in there.
I'll see if it happens over here. See, like, I'm fine on this side, but when I'm on this bit, I try and stand still, and I just feel dizzy, and I can't...
Jason, I just felt the exact same thing.
You felt the same thing?
Yeah.
Because like you stand in this area and you feel a bit dizzy, but when you're over here, it's like I can't stand still. Like my body, just by itself, is moving around and looking over there. But this was the condemned cell. If you were someone who was sentenced to death, they would have brought you here.
Where are you feeling pressure on your head?
It's more as if something's turning it so that I'm facing somewhere. One of the things that Christine told me is the reason why they had the windows placed up so high is sort of a psychological one. You're looking up to heaven. This is a condemned cell. You've been sentenced to death. You spend your last days in here. You're basically looking right up at a place where they probably don't expect you to be heading.
You're looking up to heaven right before you die.
Facing away from the sun.
Yeah.
So their souls would never rest. In that cell, no matter where you stood, it felt like your body was turning towards the window, and it would always go to that point. It was really, well, it was very odd.
It was heavy anxiety instantly, even though we were joking around a second ago.
You're in a condemned cell. You're condemned to die. So all your emotions are coming out. I mean, how would you feel if I said to you, right, you're condemned to die tomorrow?
This is the last place you'll ever stand in. You're going to die a metre away.
Exactly.
From here.
There's a lot of emotion there. So for me, why can't that emotion be stored? As people, we pick up on that residual sort of energy that's around. As I say, not everyone's wrong. If it was only 1 or 2 people out of hundreds, I'd say, oh yeah, maybe. But just about everybody that goes there has the same feelings.
For anyone who hasn't been to Castlemaine Jail before, to get to solitary confinement, you have to go down the staircase.
Down the stairs.
That's right,
Sorry.
down the stairs.
That was creepy.
So you head down to the basement area. It's underground. It's right next to where they used to have the kitchen. And if you turn left at the staircase, there's a small corridor. It's a really tight one. And at the end, there's 2 wooden cell doors. So these 2 cells here are the solitary confinement cells.
Oh my god. They're so small and dark.
There's no sunlight in there.
You know, I was reading upstairs about all the reasons why people were put in solitary confinement. Things like leaning against the wall of their cell.
Sitting on the bed.
There was looking at the warden as he walked past.
Talking was a big one.
Yeah, because this is a silent prison. People weren't even allowed to speak to one another.
That's right. Do you know how long they spent inside here?
I don't want to know.
Usually a few days. But you could be in here for weeks.
Weeks.
That's right.
You would go insane.
Maybe we should come back when it's dark.
Great.
You'd have full sensory deprivation if you were in there. You're in the pitch black, you really can't hear a lot. So if you're in there for many hours or days, you start going a bit loopy.
Oh, it was terrifying to be in there. Even just in daylight, I couldn't imagine even being there with the door shut. And interestingly enough, as you left the solitary confinement cells, you find yourself in an area that used to be the kitchen.
Imagine being stuck in there for a period of time. Most of your senses are gone, and yet you can smell food cooking, and all you get is bread and water. And maybe just water.
How horrible is that?
So
And you got no sense of time either. That's an experiment I've conducted many times with people in the solitary confinement cell.
And the dark will do that to you.
One of the things that you guys touched on before is about kids being in the jail. Yeah, when the parents went off into the goldfields to dig for gold and kids were left behind, especially if kids were sick, some of them would just pass away. So a lot of them were buried in a place called the Pennyweight Cemetery, which is just before you get into Castlemaine. It's a pretty sad place, I'll be honest with you. There's a lot of tombstones that are there and they're hand engraved. Where it's located, especially at that point, there's no gold there. Because if there was, I'm pretty sure that there would have been claim jumpers and gold diggers would have ripped all the bodies out of the graves and then was dug for gold. There's a lot of graves there that are not even marked. You know, there's only like, some of them you'll see there's just pebbles put around, little tiny pebbles in the shape of a grave.
You wouldn't know how many were stacked up or anything like that.
That's right.
You know, that's the sad part about it.
People being poor and not having access to medicine,
Conditions,
things,
money.
and conditions.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, the little kids were dying of all sorts of things, you know, like tuberculosis or, yeah, all sorts of things. Today we would think, you just get treated for that. But they couldn't do it back then.
It's probably part of the reason why the children would end up at the jail if their parents were there, because the conditions outside in the goldfields, even in Melbourne as well, were so bad they didn't have the welfare that we have today for children. So it might have been better for them to be inside the prison than it would have been to be outside, simply because there would be no one else to look out for them.
I guess as the town slowly became less goldfield, more town, we passed a theatre that looked ridiculously old. Lots of small houses.
But as you're coming into Castlemaine, did you see all the diggings along the side, on the right-hand side? That just gives you an indication of how large, how big a scale that the diggings were there.
And you've got to think too, with some of the gold being there, you still need to have butchers, you still need to have entertainment with pubs. So very slowly the town would grow from an itinerant movement of people to an established group of people. And that's what you'll find with all the towns around the goldfields. The itinerants would move in and out according to what they found. There would still be a core of people that would stay there.
On the subject of the town, guys, the reason we chose Castlemaine and the reason I wanted to go to Castlemaine is because we've heard trickles of stories, particularly haunted stories coming out of the jail. And going there and talking to every single person that stepped foot in that jail, everybody had something to say. Everybody knew someone, or it happened to them personally. Something spooky, something unexplainable happened inside the jail itself. Jason and I were near the condemned cell, and we've looked back at the footage of us standing and talking around that area, and there's actually an orb.
87.
Welcome to the condemned cell. Down towards the gallows, his arms strapped, his legs strapped so he could barely shuffle. He'd go onto the trapdoor, he'd put a white hood over his head, and the executioner would pull the lever.
Yes, they get me every time too.
I'm wondering, you guys are the experts, what can you tell us about orbs?
Did you see it physically?
Or not when I was there, no, not at all, but on the footage it exists. I'm curious, is it dust? Is it possible it's a bug, or is it something?
Well, look, it could be many things. Not big on orbs. To me, they're just dust, and I'll automatically dismiss them every time. It's not to say that I'm right every time. I mean, Anthony's got another take, which I'm sure he'll tell you all about.
I'm always a little bit skeptical. I'm always looking to disprove what's going on so that ultimately I know exactly what is going on, or as best I can. An orb is just a doorway into a time and space period for a spirit that is still hanging around in that space. And quite often in orbs you will see faces, and they're the ones I look for. If you bring it up on your phone, and Gary will confirm this too, you can enhance a picture, and that's the connection you're making through to that point.
Have you seen a photo, or have you taken a photo that you've seen a face in before?
Absolutely.
I've seen a lot of them, and I differ with Anthony on this. I look at it as pareidolia.
What's that?
Pareidolia is where your mind's trying to perceive something that isn't really there. Like looking for fluffy bunnies in the clouds. They're not really there.
That is common, and you can look at that at any other space. However, if you show it to 3 or 4 people and you don't say anything, and they go, "Oh, look, there's a face. Oh, look, there's a face," then there's a face. But quite often, I've had orbs, a blue orb, for example, that I've seen around a person, and I said to them one night, we were in the car and I'd had a few drinks and I probably shouldn't have, and I made this comment. I said, "So when are you guys getting pregnant?" And then the driver, who's a friend of ours, he says very quietly, "We just got told today we can't have a baby." And I said, "Rubbish. I just saw a blue orb right there. You will be having a baby." And then it was only about maybe 6 weeks later, she rang me up and she was screaming down the phone, I'm pregnant, and I'm going to have a boy."
When we were at Castlemaine, especially in the night vigil, walking around the jail, I noticed that you and a few other people were using equipment that I've never seen before, that I had to ask a lot of questions about. In terms of discovering evidence, by using that equipment, you have much luck?
Well, firstly, I don't hold a lot of faith in all the equipment. I don't use it to find ghosts. The equipment's there.
They'll find you.
They'll find me. The equipment's there and it has a purpose. For example, an EMF detector will pick up electromagnetic fields.
Electromagnetic fields are given off by things such as light switches, wiring, electrical appliances. Even people have our own magnetic fields. There is a common belief ghosts or spirits emit electromagnetic fields.
Does a ghost give off an EMF? How do I know? Wouldn't have a clue. What I use the equipment for is usually to pinpoint man-made things, to try and debunk things where I can. I use things like infrared cameras, obviously, and infrared thermometers. I use thermal imaging as well. Now, thermal imaging for me is probably one of the stronger ones I use. If you're alive, you're going to give off heat. You've got a heat signature of some sort. That video footage I got from Kat that she took down there, it's very interesting. I can't quite make heads or tails of it properly. It's still very grainy, but there's definitely a shadow.
Yeah, and you're just looking at a doorway, and I'm thinking, okay, what's going to happen here?
Just a door.
It's just a door, just a normal door. And there's a shadow that sort of moves across, and nobody was down there but her.
It's literally walks in front of the lens, and it's just a dark shadow.
Again, you've got to have checks and balances if you're going to do this sort of stuff.
It's an event. Something has happened.
Something's happened, but you can't see what's happened because there's no shape and there's no definement. The fact that it's happened is cool. When you get a grainy shot, it's always hard because you don't know, because the grains are sort of moving and you're trying to capture something. But because it's pixelation, like on an old black and white TV or an old TV when it goes into limp mode and it just goes zzz, and so what you've got is all zzz, and it's all grey and speckled and what have you. Well, out of the white noise, you'll hear things, you'll see things, but how much of that is at the moment and how much is actually real?
There's always that little bit of myth surrounding something. A classic example was at Arradale. It's an old asylum. A friend of mine, Jose, and myself, we just locked off a camera in the morgue. A little bit later on, after we retrieved the camera, talking several hours later, we started to watch the footage and we saw this like flash of light that went across the wall. And it took us a long time, but we debunked that. We said straight away, we knew what it was because we went back and we reenacted it. Where the locker doors are, where the body lockers are, when you've got an infrared camera beaming on a wall and you open the door, you're getting an IR reflection off the door, so you can see that. So we disproved it. We thought, yep, we've got this, we know what it is, but then who opened the door? That was the next question.
Oh.
So we're happily debunking it, saying this is fantastic. We've got something here. We nailed it. We know what it is. But who opened it?
Yeah, who opened the door? Inside the locked door.
Inside the locked door.
Yeah.
Well, bringing that back to Castlemaine in particular, I know, Gary, you've been there a few times, and us being there, when we had that vigil, have you experienced anything like that there?
There's a couple of things happened on that night. I went out into the jail. I had to go to the men's room down the back, and on the way back, I stopped and had a look around, and it was dead silent. And I walked back up the corridor, and then Kat came up to me and she said, "Were you whistling before?" And I said, "No, I wasn't whistling at all." So I did question her about what sort of a noise was it a tune or anything, and she said it was just a whistle. But we went back out into the jail, and Kat walked up one side of the jail, I walked up the other corridor, and we heard the whistle again. So we both come running around to where I was, which is down near the solitary when you go down the stairs, and didn't hear it anymore after that. We only heard it that time, and then, so we decided to go in one of the cells and do a little lone vigil. And lo and behold, we got some EVPs from that too.
What's an EVP?
Electronic voice phenomena. It's a disembodied voice. There was something talking with us that we captured.
If they do that, Mary, send them packing, okay? Amen. If they do that, Mary, send them packing, okay? Amen.
What was the voice?
To me, it sounds like a very broad Scottish accent, and I distinctly remember Kat, she said that you don't need to be afraid. And the voice that was captured in a Scottish accent said, "Well, should I be?" It's like,
Man, all the cool stuff happens when we weren't there.
But you really have to spend a lot of time by yourself to record or whatever, so you can try and capture it, to really get the essence and the feel of what a place is like. And, you know, quite often, and Gary will confirm this as well, we rock up mid-afternoon and I'll just wander off somewhere and sit down. And quite often all I'm doing is sitting there and allowing my energy to blend with the energy of the space and just enjoying the feel of it. I mean, it's not always a nice feel. You've got to be open to
You're so
it.
brave to do something like that. I was terrified even being left alone for a second at night in that jail.
All right, we're in front of the Castlemaine jail. It is dark, it is cold, and Kat is about to lead me on a tour, I guess. Would you call this a tour?
Just a casual little wander.
We've got some equipment, we've got some stuff set up. We're gonna see what we can find. I'm scared. I don't know if you can tell.
No,
Nah, not at all.
There's actually no need to be. I've been coming here for quite a long time now, over the course of 5.5 years, I'd have to say, and I'm quite familiar with the place. I can assure you there's absolutely nothing to worry about.
Until she wets her pants and runs away.
However, if you do see me running, try to keep up.
I'm following you. So let's go inside.
This is a thermal imaging cam.
So you can see the handprint on the wall over here? See,
yeah,
that's
look at
quite warm. Now, was one of you guys just leaning on the wall?
Yeah, that was me, sorry.
Okay, well, there we go. So, everything living, as you can see, gives off a heat signature. If you were to pick up an anomalous form on here, a moving form, that is giving off the opposite of a heat signature.
Okay.
Well, it's not living.
Could it be
Why
like
would you-
bugs or like a draft going through? Does it pick up things like that?
Even an insect will give off a heat signature.
Okay.
There is always going to be ambient air current movement.
So if I suddenly
you can
feel
see.
colder, could possibly be just it getting colder in here because of a draft. We found a piano. I'm going to try and play this in the dark and see if we attract anyone.
Well, what you actually did there has a name which you may not even be aware of yet. What you were doing there is something called Singapore theory. So Singapore theory is also known as the theory of familiarization. If these energies are indeed in this place, playing, say, era-appropriate music or leaving out objects that were contextually appropriate to this place. You
So
could
really
leave
I've
out,
just woken everybody up.
well, you basically could. You could be evoking emotions or evoking a reaction. This wing that we're in at the moment, this one's the north wing. These cells along here, I don't know if you can actually see too much as it's very dark.
Yeah,
but
no,
these cells
everything's-
along here were used to house the lunatics. This wing was also used to house the women and the children. It was used to house the debtors.
I'm
so
sorry, the
people-
lunatics were popped in with the children and the women?
Not in the same cells,
Okay.
but in the same wing. The women were housed in this wing during the time they were housed in the jail because this wing was closest to the basement and the kitchen.
Kat, this is spooky. This is
As I
really
said,
spooky.
I have spent a lot of time here, and most of that time has been spent in the dark. I am very conversational.
Okay.
In the way I go about investigations, I am very conversational. Because when you think about it, if this was their home, if someone came barging into your house with a whole heap of strange looking gadgets and proceeded to demand that you show yourself or something like that, you'd probably be a little annoyed. I can tell you a little bit about that rope too and how you'll know that it's not a proper hangman's noose.
Well,
Do you know how many loops there would have been on the knot on a proper hangman's noose?
not at all.
There would have been 13. 12 for the jury and 1 for the judge. So I'll bring you into this cell in here. I imagine that it would have been an extremely stressful experience because when you're in here, during your last day of your life, you would have been in here and you would have been hearing the sound of dynamite explosions outside. What that actually was the people blasting the holes in the ground to dig your grave.
Oh my God. I'm in here for, 12, 13 hours straight, just listening to my own grave being dug, as I know I'm about to die about 2 meters from where I'm standing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Quite often people feel unaccountably anxious or uneasy in this cell.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit of a skeptic when it comes to, I guess, ghosts themselves. Like, hearing is and seeing is believing. But, like, I just don't know if it's because it's dark in here, because you just told me that story, but I'm so terrified, like, so scared.
As I said, I've never actually felt scared in this place, but to me there's a sadness to this room, I suppose, maybe because we're aware of its purpose, because we're aware of the fact that 10 men did spend their last night on Earth in the cell. I doubt they would have slept very much.
There was stuff happening in front of you that you didn't even see at one
When?
stage. I was doing a bit of audio, so I had the audio gear on at the time.
Just saw it with my own 2 eyes.
What did you see?
What I saw when you walked down there, you and Stella were in the corner, and I was underneath. I was trying to pick you up so I didn't get too far away from the mics. And I thought you walked into the cell above me, and I saw a silhouette go in there. And that's when Stella said to me, goes, no, Ellie's down in the corner with me. But I just saw above me someone walk into that cell. And yeah, it sort of caught me by surprise, and I honestly thought it was you. I really did.
Not far up ahead from you guys, I looked up and I saw someone walk in the cell, and I thought it was you. And I said, oh, did you just walk in the cell? And you went, no. And I heard your voice down the other end of the... And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, if you didn't walk in there and...
It wasn't me.
It was happening, it's happening all around you.
Go back to when we did that first vigil together. We've never worked together before, never done anything else. And in that vigil, what I really tried to get you to do was open yourself up to the energy and feel who you were. So feel your own pain, your own cold, your own everything else, and then open yourself up to that energy. You both had some very interesting reactions to some of the spirit activity that was going on around us.
What do you expect to happen tonight?
Good question. I have no idea. I'm hoping we will be able to connect with a spirit or two or three and just get a bit of a feel. You know, the way I work, I blend with the spirit's energy, and then sometimes I see things, sometimes I hear things. I'm open to that experience. Being honest is really important. You can't go in there and make stuff up. Wow, we're here. Should we go do it?
Yeah, I think.
Let's do it.
Cool,
Okay.
cool. So what are you hoping you might experience when we disappear into the dungeons?
Well, I'm hoping something will happen.
I'm expecting something to happen now. I mean, after all of that, I can't go out and not, see something.
I always tend to find at old prisons, and old jails, when they are empty after they've closed, you always do get that feeling of tranquility, but that, it felt very nice and very peaceful in there.
So what I'd like you to do is sit with your feet flat on the floor and just basically put your hands on your knees like that. You can have them up if you want to. It's just about being relaxed. Just take a deep breath in through the nose and then out. And so what we're going to do is just play the flute for a sort of a moment or two, just to draw in some energy, draw them in. Just come through, make your presence known. We have a meter, we have a spare chair for you if you want to sit down in the chair. And if we can get you to light the lights up, it tells us that you're here. Otherwise, we ask you to make a noise, we ask you to touch somebody on the head, and I'm just starting to see a glow on the meter. The warmth, a lot of warmth has come up around my face area, around my brow. The spirit does believe in making noises for us. They will create noise if they have an opportunity. It takes a lot of energy. That's why the interaction's important. You need to interact. But I'm picking up a guy. He comes from England. His name was Stephen, and Stephen I think it's Bainbury. Feel free, Stephen, as you're joining us, to use the meter or sit in the chair. Stephen was here in 1851, is that correct, Stephen? You're here in 1851. And did you come out, you came out as a kid, okay. So you've come out quite young. He was up this way, he'd done some more nasty, not so nice things inland. Came up here to try and escape. I want the rods to point to where you are at the moment. Okay, so right behind me, and my back is like ice at the moment. So it's another indicator when you're working with spirit. If it gets really, really cold behind you, yet your front is warm, then the spirit's behind you. You've got an 18-year-old kid, more a man at that point. He's quite skinny. I would put him at about 5'4". He had sort of a blondie brown hair, green eyes. He had a ready smile, but he was missing teeth. He had problems with his left leg down his calf from an accident. It's really badly damaged. He didn't die in the jail. He's connected to this area.
Interesting part of that whole experience downstairs, first off, was when you were holding those, I can't remember what they were called.
Divining rods.
The two little roddy things, and
That's them.
the two little the roddy bits.
Yeah,
the
that's the technical
doodad,
term
the
for
thingamabobs. Yeah, and they were moving as you were asking questions, and at first I was like, oh, he's got to be moving them, come on. It got more believable as the experience continued, and I know Jason, watching your eyes from across the room, were just wide open with shock.
I have used dowsing rods before, and
What for?
Well,
Does she love me? Does
in
she
other
love me not?
haunted
Does she love me?
places.
Oh, in haunted locations, okay.
So it's always interesting to see the way they move. And I've seen people who've never held them before react in shock when they do, when they rods seem to move when asked to or action to. The vigil itself, is quite a powerful atmosphere, definitely.
Ellie, can you feel something odd going on around the side of your face, the left side of your face at the moment?
A little, yeah.
A little? What are you feeling? Explain what you're feeling.
I don't know, like the right side of my face is quite cold because it's cold in here, but this side's warm.
Yep. And all right, we've got a candle there, but it's not really throwing out that much
No,
warmth.
no.
So again, you've got to disprove everything else so that candle we know is not putting off that much warmth. You've got candles on both sides, so theoretically it's going to be a warmth on both sides. So is it tingling? Is that what you're feeling?
Yeah, on like my cheek.
So he's standing next to you. What I did when I didn't ask aloud, where is Stephen standing now? He's moved over next to you. I want you to ask Stephen to touch the top of your head or touch your hand. And you can do this as well.
My right arm is absolutely freezing at the moment. Just all of a sudden, it's really quite cold.
Quite cold? Ask Stephen to connect with you. It's like asking Stephen to operate the lights. Just do it in your mind. Excuse me. Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you. All right. Interesting, we're listening to, when I work as a medium, I'm taking on board everything that happens, sounds that come to us. I coughed then because it felt like my throat was coughing. And I said, oh, is this the spirit, another spirit that's come in? The horn goes off straight away, so I know it's connected with something happening.
You were mentioning that there was someone hanging around me, and there was someone near Ellie as well. You mentioned a pain on the left-hand side of my body, which is definitely something that I felt.
So I get into the moment, I give you what I get, no bones, no lies, no nothing. It is just straight from the horse's mouth.
Have you had any response? Anything reacting with you?
My fingers are feeling very tingly, but that's about it at the moment.
Yep. What about you, Ellie?
Yeah, my hand, my left hand went really cold when I asked him to touch my hand.
Cool.
I was like,
so that's the thing. So
that's freaky.
Stephen's still with you. You've got another spirit around you. What I also want to acknowledge, a gentleman here that I believe was a guard. They might have been here when the fire happened, and I'm not sure of the history. We might have to research that. But we've got a guard here. His name was George. The choking was like smoke in my throat, and I'm almost 100% certain there was a fire here at the jail at some point.
Earlier that day, it was a steam train, must have been one of the tourist ones, and I was leaving Castlemaine Station. I remarked to Ellie how much I like trains.
Just out of curiosity, do you like trains, old style trains?
Yeah, actually earlier today a steam train came into Castlemaine railway station, and Ellie will probably tell you I got extremely excited.
Awesome, you just told me you like trains. So this gives validation. All right, so this is validation so that I like old trains and I like steam trains and things like that. He didn't say that, he said, you like trains and you like old trains. So if you got excited by that coming into Castlemaine today with me not only rocking up an hour ago, that is brilliant.
Yeah, I don't really know how to explain that to you. It's very interesting.
Well, it shows that he is what I call a corporal being. He's obviously been around you guys where you've been working here today, and he's come in and you've not acknowledged him in that way, so he's come in, and that's what a medium's all about. It's just literally bridging a gap between the physical and the spirit world.
You were speaking to, I guess, spirits and energies, or they were speaking to you. I'm just curious how that whole, experience works for you.
I'm getting information impressed upon me in different ways. So sometimes I feel things, sometimes I see things. And so when I'm seeing something like a train, for example, this is what I'm being shown.
Is there a reason that we can't blend with spirits and someone like you can?
There's no reason you can't.
Yeah.
You know, Gary's been saying to me, I'm not a medium, I'm not a psychic for as long as I can remember, and he picks up more on his body than most people do. Everybody has the ability to be a medium. We're all born that way. It's conditioned out of us. We're taught you can't have invisible friends when we're kids. It's one of the very common things that we sit there and we'll have a tea party. As we grow older and we're conditioned by our friends, our family, our schooling, education,
Social
religion,
media.
social media, everything. All you're talking about is expanding your intuition just that little bit more to then allow your energy through your intuition to connect with the energy of the spirit person. Or the memory, which is an energy stored in the building or in the object. In summing up, I mean, there's so much more we could talk about in how to connect with spirit and the ways we get information, because every person receives information very differently. And so the best way to discuss that would be in another chat at another time, because we are sort of running out of time.
You could go on forever, just like me, couldn't you?
I could.
There's so much that you've just said that I have no idea and have never heard before, and I find it so interesting. We could sit here and talk for hours, which is why we should definitely come back and have another chat. But thanks for being here, Anthony.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's been an eye-opener, if anything. I feel like we've only really touched on the surface of Castlemaine, and there's so much more out there for us to go and sink our teeth into.
I think that's definitely right. Thanks for letting us be here, Anthony. It's been a pleasure having a chat to you.
You too, Gary.
You too, Gary.
No probs.
And, I'm looking forward to, seeing if anything else comes out from what we caught at Castlemaine, see if anything else in particular is pointed out by people watching at home. And I'm interested to see what we'll find
comes
in
next.
Exactly, what comes next.
Stay tuned for the next episode.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and always remember, keep an open mind.
And don't let the bed bugs bite.
Jason? 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 Oh, mate. Luxury in the 70s?
Oh, it's lovely. I've got a bed, I've got a desk, I've got a good book. How was the 1860s?
Oh, refreshing.
Oh, that's good to hear, Ellie. I'm glad that you had a great time. And now, come on, Ellie. Ellie, this is childish. Ellie?